This is a Case Davis 40+4 Super Trencher. We picked it up at auction a couple years ago. It was just sitting there, tore all apart. After the auction, we talked to the guy that owned it. He said he just had the engine rebuilt in it. That's why it was sitting in pieces. So we got it home, put it all together, got everything running and working good. After maybe a couple hours, the engine started squealing real bad. So I tore it apart, and there's 4 nozzles that spray oil up under each piston, and one of them plugged up, and it scarred the cylinder real bad. So I called a local machine shop, see if they could bore it out, put sleeves in it, because it had already been bored 30 over. So he started whining and crying, wanting to rebuild the whole thing. Said he could have it done in 5 days for $1,500. So we took it over there, and a couple weeks go by and he still isn't done with it. A couple more weeks go by and he's not done with it. Ended up taking him 9 months, and then he wanted $3,000. But anyways, we got it home, and I got it painted and put everything back together, got it working. Ran it for a while, come back the next day, check the oil in it, and the engine's full of hydraulic oil. And it happens just sitting, so the only way hydraulic oil could be getting into the engine is from this gear case. It bolts onto the engine block right over top of the crankshaft, so that seal he put in there must be either the wrong size, or he said he bought a used crankshaft and machined it down, so maybe he machined it down and put in the standard size seal. So it's letting hydraulic oil into the crankcase. So I'll have to tear it apart and see what's going on in there. That gearbox runs the trencher up front. It's got the hydraulics for the hydrostatic drive. There's a hydraulic pump down in there for the backhoe. Take that apart, you gotta take all the sheet metal off. Pull this apart, and then there's 4 bolts down in here that go into the engine block. It's not any fun. It takes about a day just to get that off. The gearbox is all plumbed in with a hydraulic reservoir, so the level in here stays even with the level in there. And it fills up sitting, so it's not having the hydraulic oil under pressure being pushed through that seal. On the back here, there's a little dozer blade that it's used kind of like outriggers on the backhoe, but it's all wore out and wobbled out. When you lower it down to raise up the machine, the whole machine wants to flop over sideways, so I gotta tear it all apart and see what I can find in there. And the hydraulic cylinder in there's leaking real bad. The bucket looks like it needs some work. All these pins and bushings, everything's all wore out on it. See, somebody hillbilly rigged these hydraulic hoses. I guess they went bad down inside there. That'll need to be fixed. Got good tires on it. Seat's junk. That's another project. Got to put a new fuel gauge on it, and then I can put the hood back on. It's got a Kelly loader for it. I got to work on the fenders too. See, they're all rotted out. This was on top of the hydraulic valve for the rear remotes on it. This is where the oil came back around to drain back into the transmission. So I made a plate to put on top of the valve down in there where I could splice two hoses on for to run through the loader valve. It's just an open center, so it just circulates the fluid back through it. Before they had that plumbed into the hydraulic remotes on back. They had this big goofy bracket up here holding the lever on all the time. This way that'll free up the hydraulics.